Hello to everyone. I'm really excited to be here today and to talk to you about the survival paradox. I don't know. I hope you had a chance to read the book. If not, it's not a bad idea since it's a book club. It has 3 parts. And again, the recording will be available so you can catch up. And the goal of the book lab is really to provide a deeper understanding beyond what's in the book of what the survival paradox is. The book, based on the historical time it was written and being writing it a few years ago, had had a focus on health, on biochemical aspects, and what to do with it from a nutritional point of view was a bit overemphasized in the book because this was the first step. This was the foundation, the straightforward, easy to understand. And in this book lab, I want to take you to a little bit of a deeper journey. Again, there are many, many layers to this understanding and journey along the survival paradox. It's very much a life journey, actually, that keeps unfolding. And so I'll give you some taste of this. The other part is that as you are listening to this book lab, I would like you, my goal, not like you, my goal is to create a transformative experience. So I would like you to listen with your head. I would like you to listen with your heart. And I would like you to listen with your being. And when I say being, I mean all the way to your cellular level. When you feel that the message is just sinking in, and being accepted by every cell in the body. And that's the depth of the transformative experience of realizing the survival paradox. So maybe I want to do a quick, really few minutes of meditation just to get you a sense of what I mean, and this will create a foundation for listening in. So you can sit with your back straight, eyes closed or opened, and you just feel your whole basis opening on the chair or on the ground if you're sitting on a cushion. Your whole pelvis is opening. You can feel the tension in your perineum between the anus and the genitalia and how the energy comes up all the way to the top of your head, your chin a bit inside, your shoulders relaxed, your tongue loose in the mouth, gently touching the upper palate. And feel how with this relaxation into this posture, being present at the moment, your diaphragm is moving more freely. And with this, you can take a deep breath and emphasize the exhalation. Letting go, letting go, letting go. And deep inhalation. And once again, exhalation. You rest for a moment after the exhalation. You let go and slow inhalation. Feeling the diaphragm coming down, the lower lungs opening, the abdomen bulges out. And feel the effect on your body and on your mental state. And as you breathe in this way, you bring your attention to your heart. So you breathe deep from a diaphragm point of view, but your focus is on your heart. Breathing into your heart, inhaling into your heart, and exhaling from your heart. So you have the physiological breath and you have the heart breath, synchronizing the heart and the brain. And you feel your heart opening and closing with the movement of the diaphragm. One is not exclusive of the other. And you put your hands on your heart and you feel the heat of the heart expanding all over your chest. With every inhalation, the chest fills with white light. With exhalation, all tension goes away. And you inhale white light to your heart, and as you exhale, the heart sends the white light to every cell in your body. Inhaling white light from the outside to your heart, and exhaling, the light goes to every cell in your body. And one more time, and you let go of your hands, and you keep breathing. And you feel how your whole body is breathing, every cell, and every cell is relaxing. Every cell is letting go of the resistance. And with this place of listening with your being, we will keep going. So in this book club journey, we're going to go back and forth between different topics and systems and rebuild on previous discussions. So I will touch a certain point and I will say we're going to get back to it. Then I will move to other topic, and then I'll bring you back to the topic within the context of today and within the context of the 3 meetings. So with this as a setup, I would like to start with talking about what is a survival paradox. So the survival paradox, as it sounds, is presenting a new paradigm, not only in health and disease, but in the way we operate and journey through life. It's the recognition that we are wired and built innately to survive. It's built in our being. It's built in our ego clinging and identification. It's built in every cell in our body. And this survival drive that keeps us alive, that allows us to get in touch with amazing resources that people often describe when they are a difficult situation, when they are suddenly in captivity, how suddenly they become warriors. They find these incredible resources. But it's the same drive is also the drive that causes us damage, difficulties, pain, trauma, and actually drives multiple diseases and shortens our life. And this is the essence of the paradox. And the challenge and the journey is the recognition and acceptance that survival is part of who we are, and the ability to learn to change the response to the stimulus that triggers the survival response. And that's an ongoing journey that leads us from contraction, you can say captivity, being captive to our reactivity, to the freedom of being completely opened, regardless of what stimulus is coming to us. And this is a journey that has physiological effect, biochemical effect, energetic effect, emotional, psychological effect, and spiritual effect. So because this process is innate in us, and many of you have heard this, it is automated in us through the sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic system, through its automated fight response, with the different aspect of action, emotions, physiology, psychology, or through fear and flight, where we run away and hide. And this system, because it's very agile, especially when it's not over-traumatized or worn away, when we stay in the sympathetic mode for too long, has the ability to express itself and to let go, just like a flexible rubber band. And the less we are carrying baggage from the past that affects the response, the more we can come back to the moment. And in this sense, techniques that shift us from a sympathetic mode to a safe, relaxed, slow down parasympathetic mode help us to shift back into more harmony. The issue comes where the nervous system response triggers a biochemical response with the excretion of survival proteins, alarmins, that then create a whole cascade of fighting response, inflammation, fear and flight, fibrosis, with devastating consequences. And we will revisit it during the book lab, where we will look at metabolic aspects, inflammatory aspects, different diseases, and what to do about it. So for now, it's more of an introduction that many of you have heard already, but just a quick refresh. But the survival response is much bigger than the effect on our health or our body. It's really how we operate. It's really how we journey through life. And the reason why I want to spend time talking about it is that we have no control or minimal control in regard to what stimulus we get from the outside, from unexpected things. You know, I'm sitting quietly in beautiful semi-rural area in Northern California, but I'm only 10 miles from San Andreas Fault. And who knows, it can erupt like right now, and there will be a mega earthquake. I have no control over this. And I'm sitting inside emotionally with many pockets of genetic, epigenetic traumas and difficulties, like all of you, like all of us, that can suddenly show up and express themselves out of the blue. So we have no control over this. The only control we have is how we respond to them. And this response is at the basis of our health, how we live our life, and our capacity and capability to heal. Because the survival aggressive response or fibrotic response drive diseases. The ability to shift it is built in and innate in each and one of us. And I want to emphasize it because it is so important. So with this as an overview of an introduction, I want to go to the actual book. And I'm going to go to Roman numeral, I think it's 13. Let me just make sure. Yes, it is. And to the forward by Jason Vezayan. And Jason Vezayan is an amazing person that I really, in many levels, you know, is like a son to me. He's been my first patient in this country from 1992. And I've treated 4 generations in the family. I treated his parents, his grandmother, his wife, and his child. So really 4 generations. And we are in close touch now for 32 years. So a long time. And Jason is a very open-minded, liberal, loving, sharing, Iranian American citizen, a Shiite, Muslim, but very, very liberal. And an amazing person, a person you just love to be around. And this liberal, open-minded person who really wanted to go to Iran and share with the world about the culture and people of Iran and the food of Iran and the scenery of Iran. And then one day out of the blue, literally out of the blue, as a victim of political tension between the superpowers, was grabbed and blamed to be a spy, which is like the most ridiculous thing. And Jason spent almost, I think, like a year and a half in very tough conditions in a notorious prison in Iran. And I really followed and supported Jason's health throughout his life, and in a limited way, because of my Israeli origin. Now it's actually much more extreme to say this, indirectly while he was in jail, giving him messages to other people, but not making big noise about it because I was worried that it will just harm him, and had the opportunity to treat him right away when he came back. So Jason wrote the book, The Prisoner, which is a great book that I really recommend. And I do hope, I spoke with Jason, and I'm starting a podcast soon, and he will be one of the first people I'll interview, so you will get to hear his amazing story. But if we look at page 13, one paragraph before the last, Jason writes in the foreword, I realized in the very early days of prison that resistance and the urge to fight my circumstances wouldn't solve my problems, and in all probability would make them worse. Survival is important, but it doesn't come through struggles. I learned this from Isaac. So this is really an amazing observation that Jason made early on. He was in isolation in a tiny, tiny cell for, I think, like 2 months, and his wife also for even longer. But he made this understanding. And from our perspective, really what practically saved Jason, especially with certain health challenges he had, was his ability to shift from what he's describing as urge to fight, urge to resist, urge to move to the inflammatory state that would have been devastating to his health, to adaptivity. He adapted. He actually created harmony in the chaos. He created rules and boundaries that attenuated, that tuned downward his survival response. And the question is, how did he do it? Because it worked for him. And with this in mind, I want to revisit the survival paradox. So for the first temporary glance, we're going to look at the biochemical response of the survival paradox. So the fighting mode of the parasympathetic system, with the increased heart rate, increased breathing, shutting down of the digestive system, pupils get bigger, bladder gets locked, and all the blood goes to the muscles. There is vascular contraction to have more blood pressure in the body, and you can understand the effects on multiple systems. It has a biochemical trigger. And the biochemical trigger has an effect. So a lot of cytokine storms, inflammatory storm, really what killed people in COVID was not the infection, was the inflammatory fighting response of the body. But then we also have the fear and flight, the isolation, the freezing. We're trying to find safety by hiding. And this hiding is done biochemically by creating a microenvironment, a shield, where we separate ourselves from the danger from the outside. The outside of us is now defined as a dangerous place. I'm in prison. The officers, working in the prison, the people who are interrogating me and torturing me, they are my danger. I need to isolate myself. So this microenvironment comes all the way to the cellular level. And while we are describing an extreme condition with Jason's story, this happens to all of us in one level or another all the time on a repeated basis. And what happened to our ancestors and what happened in our life affects how we respond to existing present, this moment stimulation. We carry this response from the past to the moment. I spoke in May about trauma, and I recommend to listen to it in this context. I really gave some innovative and intriguing explanations. So the biochemical isolation creates me and the outside, and creates a fighting environment, a contradictory separation environment, where I need, for my safety, to be separate from the outside, to be suspicious of the outside. And this microenvironment is where bacteria can hide and mycotoxins can hide, because this microenvironment means we are shielded. Oxygen is not coming to the tissue. The tissue becomes hypoxic, anaerobic. So mycotoxins, fungus, mold likes to grow in areas without oxygen, without sun, areas that are very wet, very sticky. Fungus, of course, can grow there. Heavy metals, pesticides. And this isolation allows a cell that has been isolated, or a tissue, to come to the recognition that from now on, they can't rely on their environment within the body, where you look at a few cells or a tissue, and the outside of the tissue in the same relationship like you and the people around you. And that's the environment where we have to be self-sustained and fight the outside and not listen anymore, and create our own nervous system, our own function, our own physiology, independent of the outside. And that's really how a cancer cell functions. And the more scared, the more in danger is a cancer cell, the more it comes into a fighting mode or isolation mode, the more it gets to shift its glycolysis into its metabolism into a survival metabolism, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, the more it becomes aggressive. The more it's going into it creates havoc. It goes into this crazy rapid movement of fighting and fighting and fighting, or making sure everything is going on. And the more it produces byproducts like lactic acid and oxidative stress that the cell cannot deal with. And it starts causing damage in the environment. So you can see how this response is actually affecting us all the way to the cellular level. So now with this understanding, I want to revisit what Jason did. So he did two main things. He slowed down, he calmed down. And what helped him to calm down is the understandings that I've taught him that everything is impermanent. Everything will come to an end. And really, if you think about the concept of impermanence, that everything is changeable, nothing stays the same, it's really the medicine for a survival response. Because survival response is holding to what we experience and not understanding and not recognizing that everything that we experience always changeable, always changeable. So basically, by Jason slowing down his response to his captures, because he didn't fight with them, he didn't struggle with them, he was more in a passive state, and this reduced the fighting, reduced the friction, and as a result, reduces the inflammation. The other thing that he did in order to fight the fear and flight, the tendency to freeze, is he created movement. Within his small cell, he walked thousands or tens of thousands of steps every day, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and worked his muscles. Which for him, by the way, knowing him was a big change of habit. It was hard for me to get into exercise. So before. And by creating this movement, what happens in the body? The circulation works better, the communication between the cells improve, oxygen gets to the tissue, and isolation, physical isolation, falls down. So the inner milieu, the environment of the body, is moving more. And this better communication breaks down the microenvironment. And in this sense, he is able to mitigate the biochemical effects of the survival paradox. And with this exercise and the scarcity of food, he also lost a lot of weight. So his system became more efficient. And this is really what allowed him to shift from survival to adaptation. He moved from a short-term strategy to a long-term strategy, and we will revisit it soon again. Now, once released, and this is again something that happens to all of us in life, we need to let go of the survival response. What was right for him, what was the best strategy while in captivity, is no longer the best strategy when he's alive, when he's safe. And this requires this flexibility to let go of the patterns. And within it, the body has specific places where it stores this trauma, where it stores these habits. And my job specifically was to open up these blockages, and it worked well. So this is an example that I'm taking from a situation that on face value doesn't look like a medical situation, somebody being in severe prison conditions and needing to survive them, and shedding how it affects your body, your being, your behavior, your longevity. So with this in mind, I want to take an in-depth look at the survival response and the survival paradox. So the survival response is really innate to every cell in our body. It's built in every cell in our body. And it's done with a very basic strategy. So even if you heard it, now that you're listening to it, of course, you are thinking about it, you are feeling it, but I want you to take this all the way into your being, into your cells. To think, how are my cells dealing with the survival paradox? So the very basic strategy of survival is creating boundaries. So not everything comes in. We create boundaries, and within the boundary, we create communication with the outside. And we discern what comes in and what goes out, right? You can see it even you drive along the state line and you stop, and there is an officer, whatever you call them, and they check what you have in your car, and they decide, are you allowed to go or you're not allowed to go? And then at the same time, people are leaving out on the other side. So this is how the cell operates. It creates boundaries, it creates communication, and it decides what comes in and what we want to get rid of. And the focus of the cell is self-preservation. So the cell decides what's good for the cell. And when a cell is too focused about what happened to him, and the cell next door is focused on what's happening to them, to him or to her, I mean, right? And again, I see cells as living creatures, as personalities. Then what one cell thinks is good for them is not what the other cell thinks is good for them. And we get disharmony. It's like hearing a melody or a concert and everybody is playing in different scale, that it's no fun, especially for people who are used to hearing things being harmonious. So if the cell identifies self-preservation as a preservation of itself as a cell, being attached and identified with its existence without recognizing that it came to this world, it has a function, and it needs to let go, and another cell will do its role. And the beautiful place to see it is in a beehive, how the bees work as a community, and they work, they never stop, and they even will give up their life, because for them, preservation is the preservation of the community. That's why I keep bees, and I go to look at them 5 times a day when I'm working out of home, just to watch their harmony and their brilliance. And the preservation of the whole. Preserving the whole community. And the question is, how do we decide what we're going to do? And from this perspective, the decision can be driven by past experiences, genetically, epigenetically, traumas of different kinds driving the response. And again, we don't have time to go into traumas too much, but when I say trauma, any experience we had in the past that we can't completely let go of, that is affecting the way we respond right now, has a trauma effect, because it's traveling from the past to the present and attenuating, changing the way we respond at the present time. The urge to survive in the past is affecting how we respond in the present, right? And then we have disproportionate response. Very common. We all experience it all the time. So it can be self-focused. The less we care about the environment, the less we care about the community, the more we care about this moment for the cell to preserve, the more of a short-term strategy it is. And we will revisit it. The more we recognize that we are a part of a larger community, naturally we feel safer. What it will do to us, and again, to us as beings, right? It can resonate to you, the way you live your life, but the way your cell lives its life is the more we'll have communication with our environment, the more what we take in and what we let go out changes. If we feel that everything is dangerous for us and everything is a survival risk for us, it means that more of what comes to us becomes toxic for us. Classical example, allergies. We become allergic to everything. One border where this happens a lot is in the gut border, where we are flooded with things we take from the outside, through the mouth, through the stomach, to the digestion, and then they meet the boundary of the cells of the small intestine. And wow, do we let them go in? Don't let them go in? Which highways, which carriers are going to bring them in? How much do we have to repackage them in the lymph system, immune system of the gut, of the small intestine, the Peyer's patches, before they are shipped into the body? How much we have to adapt them to the body, or how much we feel safe with letting them go in? This will change the receptors on the cell and will drive cancer, autoimmunity, diabetes, anxiety, metabolic disorders, etc. How much energy we have in the body, how we produce it, etc. So this concept of how safe we feel in our mind, in our heart, in our being, has a profound effect on everything we do in life. And as I reflect on this, I look especially at people who meditate. So some people meditate and they get sick while they're on retreat. And they get, and they say it's purification, which there is some truth to it, it's possible. But from my perspective, some kind of imbalance there. At least my own perspective, my own experience is every time I meditate, it makes me feel better. Every single time. Why? Because the cell is feeling safer. The being is feeling more spacious. The reactive response is melting away. And what it does, it changes our receptors. And when it changes our receptors, when the cell recognizes it's part of a larger community, And when it does its works, it goes away. Its identity is always here as part of the community. What it does, it changes the way we produce energy. It changes our mitochondrial function. So we talk a lot about mitochondrial function. We talk a lot about how to improve energy, and people do a lot of stuff to do it, and extreme stuff, and some of it works and some of it doesn't work. But the most powerful way to do it is to change our mind, to change our heart, to change our point of view about life, about what we meet from the outside through the different things that come to our senses, and what we meet in the inside from the point of view of emotions, psychology. Because something small comes to us, and suddenly we get triggered and anxious, and we start, how come it? Sometimes it makes no sense. It's a habit. We are adding one more experience to a chain of experiences, and the past experiences are driving the present experience. We are unable to let go of this sticky multi-level of experiences. So how does the body deal with it? The body needs to survive. The body will adjust its metabolism to reflect these different states of the survival paradox. So normal metabolism, everything is flowing well. Things come into the cells, things come out of the cells, things come into the tissues, things go out of the tissue. There's no danger. There are no toxins in the supply. It's everything good things for us. We can take our time. Nobody is rushing us. Mitochondrial function is very good. It's efficient. It's slow. It's balanced. It works very well. And it's able to clear the byproducts very well. It's being trained by creating some oxidative stress through exercise, through breathing, through temperature exposures, whatever you want, that develop our ability to do cleanup, but in a moderate way, in a mild way. And we produce 36 ATP from one glucose. No lactic acid, cell is preserved, cell understand it's part of a big community of 50 trillion cells, and all goes well. And when we want the mitochondria to function better, and many of you go to naturopathic physician and nutritionist, they'll tell you, take these cofactors and methylated B12 and methylated B6 and thiamine and lipoic acid, and make sure you have all your minerals and magnesium and zinc and copper and the trace elements, and eat organic food, and it's all important. But the essence of it is our state of mind. Our state of mind is what drives us to this response. Our state of mind, our state of being, this is our driving force. And our state of mind is also what can spontaneously turn it around. That's why I say open heart medicine, tapping into our infinite healing potential. Because everything is changeable, everything can transform in a second. So what throws us off is toxins and stressors of all kinds. So for example, we don't eat the right foods, or we eat too much sugars, we get too much insulin spike with a lot of byproducts. And then if there's too much insulin, if there is too much glucose, we need less insulin receptors, because otherwise too much glucose will come into the cell. So then we're not able to efficiently use glucose when there is not so much glucose, like an hour after a meal. And then we get these spikes in the function of glucose metabolism in the cell. But more common, we have heavy metals, we have pesticides, we have mycotoxins, we have infectious agent, we have inflammatory compound that changes the receptors on the cells. Receptors on the cell, as we hear, are structures that receive compounds from the outside. They can bring the compounds in, but more common when these receptors that are specific to a certain compound, let's say to galectin-3 or to certain VGF, to whatever it is, or to growth factors, and now they're activated, they will trigger a certain response inside the cell. Inside the cell. And this response, if it's a response of harmony, will trigger a chain of harmonious metabolic function. For example, it will upgrade adenosine monophosphate kinase, gives a lot of substrate for producing a lot of ATP, our energy storage molecule. And if there's a lot of substrate, glucose can slowly use a lot of them, and we get 36 ATP from one glucose. But if we are in a place where we are in danger, and insulin receptors shut down, and AMPK shuts down, the alternative pathways start, something called mTOR1. We feel like we have no air, we are in danger. Hypoxia-inducing factor gets potentiated. Mitochondria gets blocked. I won't go into the metabolic pathways with PDK and PDH. And then we move into glycolysis. We produce only 2 ATP from glucose. We can produce energy 100 times faster, but only 5 to 6% efficiency, right? 2 compared to 36 is 1 to 18. So we actually need 2,000 times, we're using now 2,000 times more glucose, 100 times more energy, speed-wise, and so inefficient. Results, a lot of byproducts, a lot of junk in the system. And acidosis. Acidity intracellularly and extracellularly, we have even less oxygen because less oxygen is being released. When this happens, everything gets aggravated. So that's the metabolism of sepsis that can kill us. That's the metabolism of a cancer cell. So all of this starts with this sense of survival, imbalanced survival response. So we talked about toxins, but of course, emotional stress, emotional danger will do the same. The therapeutic strategies are a few of them. Very basically, let's remove the stressors. Let's remove the toxic stressors, the biochemical stressors, the heavy metals, the mycotoxins, the pesticides, the too much refined sugars that causes spikes in metabolism, the things that produce an allergic response. Let's remove all of them. But there are 2 basic strategies that you hear a lot for people who are into this field of metabolic function that are worthwhile talking about. And they seem to be conflicting, but they are really not. But you hear different people argue with each other about which they are. So one approach, what we talked that Jason did, is relaxing, slowing down, creating space. And when we relax, when we breathe deep and exhale all the way, it allows oxygen physiologically to get to the tissue. And when the tissue has enough oxygen, it feels safe, it feels relaxed. It slows down the need to produce energy so quickly because it has enough of it. If we look at it from a mind point of view, it's really what happens when we meditate. So when we are in our regular life, we have one thought following the other, following the other. We don't recognize the space between the thoughts, right? You are listening to me right now, and you may be thinking about something you had to do yesterday. And now, right now, you are yesterday thinking about something, you're not here anymore. And then suddenly you come back. Where you were, you got lost in your thoughts. But this is also the response in survival. There is no time. We have to respond very quickly. There is no place to see what's under. There's no place to clean up. Everything under it, everything under this isolation, we are not in touch with. And these are pockets pockets of past experience, pockets of toxins, pockets within the microenvironment that here is created by multiple thoughts that don't allow our being to come from the conscious area to the unconscious area or subconscious area, depending on the definition. So when we slow down, when we create space between thoughts, that's the training of the mind, the first training, by slowing down, the shamatha meditation. Then suddenly deeper layers come up, memories, insights, and emotions, amazing experience and terrible experiences. Terrible experiences, we want to push away. It's like we suddenly remember difficult things from our past. The good, amazing experiences, we want to hold on. Both are survival responses. One is for survival, we push away. One is for survival, we hold to. When these things come up, our tendency to hold to them is another expression of the survival response. The trick in meditation, and place where many people fall, is they become observant of these experiences and they hold to them. They don't just let them go. So this expression, this is a detox process on the level of the mind. But these experiences are stored in our body. Stored, you can say, in our brain, stored in our tissues, stored in our fatty tissues, different emotions relate to different organs, etc. So when we relax, we slow down, we allow things to come. The other thing that we do in order to allow ourselves to deal better, right? And Jason, for example, did it. He slowed down, he stopped the fighting. The other thing that we allow ourselves is to challenge the system. We challenge the system by stressing the system in a controlled way and when we stress it in a controlled way, we create a rebound balancing effect when we don't do it too extremely. It's like we take a rubber band that wasn't used for a long time, it becomes dry, and we very gently stretch it and let go. Stretch it and let go. Or we lift some weight gently and then we relax. Or we stretch the muscle gently and we let go. And by doing this, we create more flexibility, more movement. So this process of creating a rebound balancing is called the state of hormesis, where a response to a mild stimulus creates harmony. If we do too much of it, it becomes toxic. And the way to merge both of those is to address the response on both ends. One is by developing harmony and calm, and the other by developing resilience and adaptation through challenging the system. Because when we challenge the system and we increase the oxidative stress, so for example, things like methylene blue, or physical challenges like cold plunges or cold shower or physical challenges, the body learns to deal with these stressors and clean up the byproducts, and we get more agile, more adaptive energetic system. But people ask, when you say stress is not good, right? Sympathetic tone is not good. People say, how come? Look, these physically induced stressors don't damage us. How come? Maybe stress is not bad for us. Well, the fundamental point that these people fail to see is that when we stress ourselves physically in order to improve our health with extreme exercises or with cold plunges or whatever you want to do, we are doing it with a state of mind of resilience, of knowing that we are doing it for our own benefit. We're not doing it out of a survival response. We're doing it out of place of willingly training our body so it gets better and knowing that we do it for 5 minutes and then we stop. We know it's impermanent, and that's why it works for us. when this is done from a point of view of stress and danger and survival response, it will be extremely dangerous for us. From a metabolic perspective, we are dealing with a survival response and an adaptation response. Just like the story of Jason. Jason adapted. The shift was from short-term survival, fighting the people who are putting him in danger, to long-term survival. And when we slow down, there is a longer time to respond. And that's where the diagram of the meditation comes. When we actually take more time, create more space between the thoughts, we are moving away from a reactive survival drive. So the survival diet is a glycolysis, creating energy very, very quickly, but very inefficiently. And in cancer patients, the cancer cells do it even in the presence of oxygen. It's called aerobic glycolysis, the Warburg effect. And that's the basis of PET scans that light up in cancer because there's a lot of glucose metabolism. The adaptive diet, which is a survival diet, but a long-term survival, is the ketogenic diet. Ketogenic diet takes a few days or 1 day to 2 days to kick in. And it slowly allows us to produce energy from an alternative source. It allows us to adapt to a different source of energy. But it's also a short-term solution. If it was the right solution for a basic diet, day-to-day diet, the body would have done it. That's why ketogenic diet, and I talk about it a little bit in the book, but you will find it on the chapter on metabolism. And again, this is the first part of the book. And we also do it intermittently, for example, during certain chemotherapy, during radiation therapy in cancer, etc. And during time when we are taking certain drugs that provoke hyperglycemia, like steroids, for example, like prednisone, like cortisol. So we'll notice that these endogenous diets are used by endogenous culture under weather-related and scarcity-related survival challenges, where it's not acute, it's over a long period of time. So Eskimos, very high-fat diet, or nomads in the Himalaya plateau, very high-fat diet. Right? These people, you give them glucose, and suddenly you have an epidemic of diabetes in these places that we see a lot, actually, being there and traveling there. So the meeting point of ongoing adaptation and survival is intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting allows us to stay on a regular diet, low glycemic ideally, but gives us time of breaks to create the cleanup and adaptation. And that's why intermittent fasting is so beneficial. Next stage, I'm going to cover this topic, explain the heart's role, and we'll start moving into diseases and conditions. And I thank everybody for joining me. And with the hope that you allow your survival paradox just to melt away. When it melts away, what we are left with is innate and boundless love and compassion, which is innate in each of us. And one moment we lose it, one moment it comes back. So with this, I will see you in a few weeks in July, and we'll continue our book club.